there is no there there. There is only here. And so what are you going to do here? And that's the question. And it's a never-ending question. And only you can answer it.
What's up, Adam?
What's up, buddy? Thank you for having me.
It's really good to see you. I remember last time we chatted up in the Wanderlust building.
Very different.
Very different. But here we are, man. We're still standing. Yeah. It's good to see you. And I've always felt a connection to you and your work, and we seem to intersect our lives, you know, year after year. So it's cool.
We keep coming back around.
That's right.
Which is nice, man, because we get to see each other in different ages and stages. And I don't know if you want people to know this or not, so you can cut it out. But, you know, we're recording in a separate section of your beautiful home. And it's just nice to get a glimpse into your real life. It's awesome, man.
Yeah. Thanks. So you sent me this project. I'm having a hard time finding the proper vocabulary for it because, yeah, it could be a spoken word album. I suppose that's the category under the Grammy that you're going to win for it. But it defies real description. So hopefully we'll listen to some of it, but can you describe it a little bit and how did it actually come together?
I mean, to be honest, I'm having a hard time coming up with the right vocabulary to explain it as well. And I would say that's a specific issue and a general issue for me. I'm pretty good at making art. I'm pretty bad at figuring out how to describe the art or brand the art or market the art. It's kind of like my biggest pain in the ass. If I was to look at my career, that's the thing that I have the most friction with. But it also means I'm still growing. And when I make something that's like moving and meaningful to me, kind of decide, is it worth it to put it out to other people and let it be whatever it needs to be for them.
Yeah. I can't remember who coined this phrase or where I heard it, but I remember someone saying this to me: before you move other people, you have to move yourself. And the moment that I began to listen to this project, I was like, wow, he really moved himself. I can feel that, you know. There is obviously something so deeply intimate going on in this album, you know. So there is a conversation that is a through line. I'm assuming that conversation is with your wife.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, man, we'd be in trouble.
I'd be in trouble.
Yeah, you'd be in trouble. And I'd feel really bad. So I'm just because I'm so curious about how art actually comes together.
Yeah.
Like, how did this come together? Because there is this intimate conversation that you're having that kind of comes in and out with your wife.
Yeah.
Then there's obviously this absolutely transcendent, stunning piano track. And then there's you peppering the top of it, you know, with poetry and song. You know, I mean, you're not singing, although maybe there's like a tiny bit where you sing for a second, but it is song-like. So where did you find the ingredients to this?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the full story just because it is an interesting peek behind the curtains to how at least I make art. I got a email from this incredible composer and pianist, Isabella Terzo from Italy, and her manager, who also happens to be her partner. And they said they liked my stuff and wanted to compose to some of my poems. So I eagerly said yes. I sent them some voice notes, and she sent me back these really rough demos. And I immediately loved what she had created, but I wasn't sure what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I had these 3 demos, and I thought, is there any market at all to monetize spoken word with composed piano and light strings? I was like, I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that anybody is going to want to hear this. And I had so much else going on at the time. I was doing like 70 shows that year, corporate, workshops, community gigs, retreats. And so I had a lot of other things that were taking my creative energy. So I was like, let me just put this down and see if it comes back later and develops into a larger project. And during the same period of time, I had been going to a therapist who was getting to know me so that we could wind up doing a medicine journey together. And we did. And I took like 3.5 grams of mushrooms and DMT and MDMA, and had a very profound experience.
In one sitting?
Yeah.
Okay. So you heroed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have called it that at the time.
Right.
But it happened.
You put on your cape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or took off everything else.
Fair enough.
And she guided me through it, this incredible therapist who I won't mention by name because of,
Someday you will be able to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what kept coming to me was these frozen ages in my life, these times when things had happened and those people had almost like crystallized inside of me. And I didn't have a relationship with them. And so when I got triggered in my life, I would catch amnesia and they would take over for a while. And I was sitting in the car with my wife having a very deep, personal, intimate conversation about this experience. And she decides to take out her phone and record it. And she told me that she was recording it, but we were already so deep in the conversation that it didn't change the tone. It wasn't like I was thinking, oh, somebody's going to hear this one day. And because of that, I was really raw.
Yeah.
And even my voice, like the tenor of my voice, it's not like when I do poetry or talk to my buddies. It's like talking to your best friend, your soulmate, the person you're building your life with, when you think nobody else is going to listen. And then she sent it to me. And like 3 days later, I listened to it and I thought, this could be the conceptual through line to that other project that I was playing with Isabella. And then randomly, one of Andrea Bocelli's producers heard one of the demos and was like, will you come perform this at the Hollywood Bowl? So we said yes. We got super excited. She flies out from Italy. She's pregnant at the time. Like, this is going to be this big coming out party for this particular piece in front of 10,000 people. And like a day and a half before, 2 days before, they call up and the producer's like, I'm so sorry. We have to cancel. Something else happened. We don't have the time anymore. So now she's like just here in LA. Yeah. And we end up going into the studio and mapping out the rest of the album. And I recorded it within like a couple of weeks after that. So I have to thank Andrea Bocelli's producer, because otherwise I'm not sure the project would have come to life either.
Yeah. There's a great story about a Chinese farmer that I will refrain from telling. But the moral of the story is never assign advantage or disadvantage to any particular situation, because you never know, what the outcome will be.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you got that phone call.
I think that I know that story. It's with the horse and the sun.
Exactly.
It's
and the sun. Yeah.
It's a great one. Anybody who doesn't know it, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I'm sure when you received that call from Bocelli's manager, there was a disappointment, but look what happened. So
Yeah.
okay, so that's an interesting. I'll just want to comment on the nature of the phone recording, because obviously when I heard it, I was very curious. I was like, well, how did this happen? Because clearly you couldn't perform that exchange. There's something so obviously unperformative about it, and raw and vulnerable and intimate. And yeah, it's funny. There is definitely a non-in-cue quality to it, because I'm so used to honestly being in the audience of your shows and hearing like that in cue,
Right.
with that particular cadence. And I won't actually mimic you right now. Maybe I'll get the balls later. But there is a performative side to you. Of course, you are a performer. But that is not on display in those recordings. And there's another quality to it, that there's just a tremendous amount of empty space. And we're so generally uncomfortable with space. And when I was listening to it, I was like, is it over? No, wait. And then I was like, yeah, that space was pregnant with a feeling, it was cool. I love what you did.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I wasn't sure I wanted to put it out once it was finished. I listened to it in the car. When it was over, I shed a tear. And then I felt like it was such a great and necessary healing journey for me to create the album as a process, that I wasn't sure I wanted to show it to anybody else as a product. I didn't want to externalize my or its self-worth. I didn't want it to be judged. I didn't want it to be criticized. I didn't even want it to be complimented. I wanted it to just be. And so I really wrestled with it for a while, and I decided to send it out to 5 people. And my criteria for putting it out would be if at least one of the 5 people got back to me after listening to the whole thing in one sitting and said, hey, this was moving and meaningful for me. It was a mirror for my own life and made me think about my own stories and how I'm living. Then I would take the hit and be willing to be embarrassed, be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to take my own medicine. And I sent it to a bunch of people, including Mike Posner. And Mike got back to me right away. Mike, God bless you. And he said, you have to put this out. He was like, if you don't put it out, he said, I'll pry it from your cold, dead hands. and he was laughing.
And he's pretty, ripped. So he probably could do it.
Oh,
he probably could rip it from your dead hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the point. It was clearly cathartic for you, and that is the nature of art, or of the best art, is that it provides the creator a certain catharsis. But it feels that the intention was that my catharsis could also be yours. And here is a story or a collection of stories, and maybe you can see some of your own in mine, such that, you feel okay, you feel enough, you feel like you can go on your own journey. And that is what feels like what the journal is like as a compendium, right, to the actual album. Because in this, it 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 creates a pathway for people to do their own inventory.
Yeah. I mean, once I decided that I was going to put it out, I started thinking about the Never Ending Now Poetry Journal as the accompanying piece of art that could live separately, but was kind of like intrinsically connected.
Yeah.
And it takes all of the poems from the album and puts them in an order that is supposed to lead the listener or the writer from fear and sadness and growth and happiness and dreams, ultimately to self-love and infinite possibility. You know, I wanted to lead people where I wanted to go and where I went, which was into hope and into presence and into power.
Yeah. So, who invented water? Or who didn't?
It's a great question. I'm going to leave that open-ended, but it's definitely one that always makes me smile.
Yeah. So this is just some insidery. So that question is sort of the prompt or the on-ramp into a poem that features a certain goldfish about the nature of growth. So I wonder if you might be able to share that one with us.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
They say a goldfish will only get as big as its bowl. But if you put it in a tank, the space can change the way it grows. It needs to have the room, or its potential doesn't show. So its environment's essential for unleashing the unknown. I ponder if it knows that it could grow beyond the bowl, that it could have a pond the size of an Olympic swimming pool, that the world is so much larger than the boundaries that it's known. Somehow I empathize with this little golden soul, because I too have unexplored and unexpressed goals that were suppressed by an environment I couldn't control. Am I still playing small because it's all that I've known when there's a giant in my bones I'm not sure I've ever shown? I ask myself this question when I'm purposely alone. When my body grows to take up all the rooms inside my home, I expand in all directions, every single inch consumed. I'm 1 billion feet tall now, my head over the moon. I look down on the earth as it slowly spins around. I look down on the countries and the cities and the towns. I look down on the square blocks and buildings all around. I look down on my street and rip the roof right off my house. I look down on myself sitting writing on my couch. Look, I barely pay attention. I'm the one that's looking down. How unaware I am of where I am. It's profound. So I put the roof back on and shrink myself back to the ground. It's crazy how I fit infinity inside my doubt. How I stuff the universe into the tiniest amounts. How I keep the solar system in the corner of my mouth. How I speak into existence, then forget what I'm about. And most days, I'm not sure which side of the glass I've been on. I win a Grammy in the shower every time I sing a song. But when the spotlight is on, my first instinct's to run. I have to super glue my feet to even tell you where I'm from. I've been training for a quarantine since I was very young. For an introvert, it slightly hurts to tell you that they'll come. I would rather get into a staring contest with the sun, although I'll never get to see who won. It's nature and it's nurture, twisting into jungle life, fighting the competition, branching out to reach the light. I tried to listen, but could only hear my ancient heart. It screamed at me to make my life into my greatest art. But where to start? These walls are keeping people out and keeping people in. I guess it's good to know where someone ends and someone else begins. But our boundaries become prisons when we see what could have been. The biggest goldfish ever measured 18 inches snout to fin. Fin.
Thanks, man. That's awesome. Oh, God, so many gems in there. I wrote down a bunch. I remember when I first heard it. What's the one to fit infinity into my doubts? Or, no, I mean, who can't relate to that, right? I mean, how often we live in this doubt or this self-doubt, right? And fear of judgment, fear of success, fear of failure. And how often we're defined, or that we perceive ourselves as defined by our environment. So, Gabor Mate, that cat?
Yeah.
He has a great analogy. He kind of brings you back in this sort of PTSD sort of way to high school biology. It's like you put a cell in a petri dish, right? And that milieu, that agar, you feed it with like nitrogen and oxygen and carbon, that cell will just proliferate and grow. But you fill it with like alcohol and bleach, that cell will die, right? Or you call that biological medium, you call it a culture.
Right? Yeah. That's amazing.
So if you put a human in a fishbowl or whatever, of love and organic whole food and support, well, the normal expectation would be that that human would grow into a healthy adult person. But what if you put that human inside a toxic culture? What's the normal expectation? That it's going to wither. And so, I think about that all the time, like with my children, for example. It's like, what kind of culture are they in? And how do they perceive themselves as, defined essentially by their environment, by the size of their fishbowl? Anyways, that brought up a lot of thoughts for me.
That was beautifully said. Are there any areas in your life where you're still looking to grow and expand? Does anything come to mind or heart that you would want to share?
For sure. I mean, I have tremendous fear of success. I grew up with everybody always telling me, like, you got so much potential. Like win a tennis tournament. Oh, you're going to win you got so much potential. My grandmother, like, you're going to be president of the United States. You got so much potential, and, honestly, my adulthood has been in some ways characterized by never achieving that potential in my own mind and having a fear of achieving it.
What do you think would happen if you achieved all of your dreams at the level that you've imagined them?
Peace. But I think it's also a certain kind of self-acceptance of, like, I'm obviously not going to win any Grand Slam tennis tournaments now, except maybe at my club I win one. Or, chances are I will not be president of the United States. Who would want to do that?
Not me, bro.
You'd have to be crazy,
not me.
Obviously. But not projecting my unfulfilled potential onto other things or other people. I think that's the real learning. I don't know, I guess you might call that envy or jealousy. You know, I'm sure you see that. It's like you're on social media and someone, you know, became a New York Times bestseller and they're like touting it. And you're like, your impulse, what's your impulse at that juncture? Is it to be envious and be like, man, that dude, that book?
Yeah.
Like, look at what I'm making. That dude?
There's a lot of that dude out there.
Tons of that dude.
Yeah.
Or can you just feel joy for someone else's joy? And that's where I want to be. I want to be able to just feel joy for someone else's joy and not project my own unfulfilled potential onto someone else.
I love that. You know, you were talking about culture, and I think our culture trains us to look up to people or down on people.
Yeah.
It doesn't give us permission to look at people, because then we wouldn't feel bad about ourselves and have to buy more shit in order to distract ourselves from that feeling of not being enough.
Yeah.
But if you're going to compare yourself to somebody, and I do it too, I have my that dude, but I also know that I am that dude to other people, and that there's like a never ending line.
Uh-oh.
That's okay.
I don't think I've ever heard that computer ring.
It's that dude.
It's that dude saying, man,
He's calling.
give me my book deal back.
Yeah. Actually, it was quite perfect,
Yeah,
right? As all
it's
things
pretty
are.
good.
Keep it in. Anyway, there's definitely like an infinite line of us. And so I try to remind myself of something that my friend said to me once, which really like framed it perfectly, which is that if you're going to compare yourself to anyone, you should compare yourself to their whole life, not to just the part that you're thinking about for you that's making you feel either envious or jealous or whatever those other emotions, resentment that come up.
That's good.
And I thought that was so strong, because our lives really should be a diversified portfolio, right? And at the end of every year, we should rebalance.
That's right. There's managed risk in a diversified portfolio, Adam.
Yeah, a lot of UBS. New bullshit out there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's like, I don't know, if I'm looking at one person's, stream and saying like, I'm not where I want to be and they are, I have to also look at their whole life. There's all these different buckets that you can put your time and energy and love into. Your family, your health, your finances, your creativity, your children, your romance. There's all these ways that you can express yourself in the world. Charity, travel. What is important to you during this season of your life? And where do you want to put that life force energy towards? Because I think that if you fully compared yourself to anyone else's full portfolio, you'd choose yours.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we build up these incredibly thick skins. There's part of, in that last piece, there's this like feeling that we're separated, right, by our individual bags of skin, and yeah, I'm an organism and you're an organism, right? All that stuff. Yet there is a field of activity that happens here it's happening right now between us in this conversation, but it's happening in every relationship. That what is really truly happening is the space between one's skin. This is the connective tissue. And in some ways, like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to grow scales. I don't want to grow weathered skin. I want to be able to greater attune and connect with people.
Yeah, man, I can very much relate to that. I travel around doing all of these workshops. I started out doing storytelling and poetry workshops in libraries and junior high schools and after school programs, high schools, Upward Bound, Art Share. I did juvenile facilities. And it was mostly about teaching kids how to find empowerment through retelling their story, getting it out of their system, seeing some separation between them and that memory, and then either letting that go or having clarity on what they want to create or manifest in the world. And for them to see and be seen, to share it with another human being, to be witnessed, and to be unconditionally accepted so that they could accept themselves.
Beautiful.
And in many ways, the journal is a culmination of the 25 years of wisdom that I have amassed from teaching these workshops, because I always had to be there in order to get them done. And I wanted to leave people with something that they could do on their own without me, so they could have that experience of alchemy, another modality for stress release, anxiety release through creativity. Oh, you know what? Oh, yeah, I know. Wait, I'm almost going to get it back because I had a reason I was saying that. I wasn't just branching out. This rarely happens to me, but it's okay. Oh, I think, no, that wasn't it. I don't want to pretend.
Well, I want to maybe pull on that thread of empowering people with creativity. This is an Alan Wattsism.
Okay.
So we so often want to live these lives of purpose. Like, I'm going to do this and this and this so I can achieve that wonderful thing that glistens on the horizon.
Sure.
Right? But when we truly examine what makes us feel purposeful, it's not something out there. It's actually just being immersed in some sort of purposelessness of the moment that we feel often in that space of creativity, where we lose sense of time, where we lose kind of sense of self-awareness in some regard, and we're just fully immersed in this never-ending now, right? It's not some purpose. It's not some goal. It's actually here. And creativity can provide that solace for people.
Yeah, and you're
reeling the fish in.
Yeah. in your last thing that you just shared, I remembered what I was wanting to say, and it actually does perfectly connect, which is that, I do all of these things and I facilitate for other people to have these vulnerable experiences. So I think that people then look at me and think that it comes easily.
Right.
And it doesn't. It doesn't come easily to me. I'm probably more prone to being suspicious, being closed off, having those scales that you talked about, carrying around my armor. But I also teach what I need to learn. And I have to fight to be vulnerable. Every day I have to fight to open up my heart. And the reason why I ask other people to do it is because I know that it's always worth it. It has never not been worth it for me to open up to people. And so there's many ways you can open up. You can open up through therapy. You can open up through moving your body and yoga and breath work and meditation and travel, things that get you out of your comfort zone and your routine, connection, true relationship. But you can also open up through creativity. And too often what I've found is that it seems confined to people who do it for a living. the professionals.
Mm.
And that's bullshit.
Bullshit, yeah.
You don't have to be a poet to make a poem. You don't have to be a singer to sing a song. You don't have to be a comedian to make a joke. And it's just another avenue for moving energy and sharing your truth with others.
Amen, brother. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I think that is so powerful that art and creativity is not just cubbyholed for someone who's making a paycheck that way. In fact, some of the most epiphanous art is probably the art that never gets heard or seen, but has created a form of release, if you will. I'm going to ask you, I think I know the answer to this question, but when you create, do you ever make yourself cry?
Yeah, that's actually when I know I've touched on a nerve of truth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess there's many types of truth. They don't only have to be sad or,
Right.
Well,
I'm sure you make yourself laugh. I make myself, when I land on some little turn of phrase and I'm laughing, I'm like, ooh, that's got to be good. That's got to be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I get the chills,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do you think that okay, let me frame this right. So oftentimes we have this image of the archetypal tortured artist that is making transcendent creation from the place of misery.
Mm-hmm.
Do you make your best art from a place of misery or a place of joy?
So really, really complicated question.
Yeah, you can have a complicated answer. That's fine.
I have never had to search for pain. I never had to make
knocking at the
up.
door.
Yeah. Now, I did perpetuate it by bad decisions, by self-destructive behavior. But I didn't have to make it up. It was always kind of a part of my life experience.
Yeah, like with your dad.
Yeah. And just not feeling like I belonged, always looking outside of myself for what a man was supposed to be or what a family was supposed to be or who I was supposed to be in the world. Mm-hmm. Those were always questions that were pretty paramount. And yet, to expand upon the question, at a certain point, I realized exploring your pain is a wonderful thing because it can make other people feel less alone. Mm. And after you create with it, you can become energetically lighter. Mm. But if you only create from your pain, then you're just going to make more pain. And so there was a certain point when I realized, I'm just boomeranging my pain back to myself over and over and over again. And it was at that moment I realized I want to start writing from pain and from joy, but I always want to wind up in a place of inspiration. Because, life is ugly and life is beautiful. You have to be able to hold two truths in the same space at the same time. And art is dichotomy, if nothing else.
I think that phenomenon of holding two potentially counterposing truths at the same time might be one of the most elusive abilities in this era, where you're pulled politically to kind of some binary choice. These are the good guys and these are the bad guys, or whatever. And this is definitely part of my work, unconnected to this, of being able to hold multiple truths at the same time. So my mother is doing this. We talked about it. She's working with Israelis and Palestinians right now to hold multiple truths at the same time. It's a challenge.
How do you do it in your personal life? Like, what is some of the strategies that you use to maintain that perspective and that middle ground?
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a technique that I was taught called steel manning. You familiar with it?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So I don't really love the name of it, but it's named to be the opposite of straw manning. So if you straw man an argument, you might say like, hey, Jeff, we should be spending more of our resources on renewable energy. And for me to straw man your argument, you're like, I'd be like, you just want to shut down all of America's oil people. You don't care about the middle of America. Like, I'm basically taking your argument. I'm not really addressing it at its core. And I'm just like dismissing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like straw manning. Steel manning is really the opposite, where you would potentially like give me, 8 or 9 reasons why it would be good for us to, invest in renewable resources. I'm just using that as an example. Could be anything.
I agree.
Fair enough. And instead of me like listening to you and forming a rebuttal in my head to your points, I'm actually making note of the best parts of your argument.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're done, I give a little space. Then it's my turn not to rebut you, but to actually reiterate the best parts of your argument back to you. And it's a really interesting technique to build a number of different qualities within yourself. First, like listening to understand, not listen to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And then through this process, you can moderate your own views and find some common ground, some middle ground, right? Where you can say, this is true and this is true. And it also often fortifies your own original opinion because you actually have to consider the best parts of an opposing opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I really often put myself through that practice, where, instead of having an emotional reaction related to my own judgment or bias to something else, I actually take a step back and don't judge something, but try to put it through that lens. And it's pretty effective.
Yeah, that's great. I can see why that works. I think I do that naturally.
Right. It doesn't have to have a name.
Yeah. Even when I'm not arguing with somebody, I have a tendency to want to make sure that they know that they were heard.
Yeah.
Before continuing. And it's not like a mirror strategy or anything like that. It's just kind of like, I don't know, organic for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. I was going to play some stuff, but I feel like I can probably do that anyways in the production of this conversation. So while we're kind of in flow, I feel like it would be better as we are if you could grace us with another poem from the album.
Absolutely. Do you want me to do the sadness one or the happiness one? I know you mentioned both.
Yeah. I don't know which one you feel right now, or which one you're most comfortable with. Tough one.
Probably happiness.
Okay.
I feel like we're maybe turning in that direction anyway.
Good.
Yeah. Happiness is not a point, it's a range. It's not a goal that you reach because it's constantly in phase. But if you stay inside the margins and you consciously engage, your happiness can find a balance on the razor's edge of change. The main problem is society has taught us that our happiness is something we can gain, something we can claim, something we attach to our names so we distract from our shame and search for happiness outside ourselves, perpetuating pain. Pain. But happiness is not a place. It's not a destination on the map. There's nothing that's outside of you that's going to show you where you're at. Awareness is a conscious act. My happiness is not an accident. I practiced it. I practiced it and practiced it. I tried to master it, but life's too multifaceted. Besides, we'd all get bored without resorting to change. What's my point? Happiness is not a point. It's a range. If you don't know what your purpose is, tell me what your passion is. Don't know what your passion is? It's where inspired action is. It's what enthusiasm gives, a manual for how to live. So if you still can't fathom it, simplify the catalyst. Tell me what your interests are. Help explore what you're about. Don't know what your interests are? What are you curious about? Tell me what annoys you. Tell me what you love to hate. Now tell me what destroys you and use your voice to go create. Play in what employs you or find a hobby on the side. Nothing that you want to try. Imagine you're about to die. That would probably force you. If someone tried to take your life and they were coming towards you, would you fight to stay alive? I remember nights when I would contemplate my suicide. I'd lie awake debating non-existence till the sun's rise. I was feeling forced too. I had shit to alchemize. Of course it had to course through. Now my dreams are actualized. God does not ignore you. Get over being victimized. What does time afford you? A paycheck is a compromise. Tell me what implores you. Are you down to sacrifice? Now tell me what rewards you. I'll point you towards the afterlife.
Oh, man. So enjoyable for me.
Thanks, man.
And so many other things, too. But I get my own private InQ show in my studio. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Happiness. Elusive. Elusive when you think of it as a point, right? As a thing and not a process. I think happiness clearly is so often associated with something out there, right? In our lives. If I get that house with the turrets and the gargoyles, then, if only then, and only if then, then I'll be happy. And then, cut the ribbon off the box, and second that you do, there's some other quest that appears on the horizon, and the hedonic treadmill churns away, right? But where, so if I'm understanding some of that correctly, happiness is not a point, so it's a range, right? As you say. Do you find yourself personally kind of moving along the spectrum of that range?
Yes. I originally got that idea from my therapist. His name was Dr. Bob Resnick. He's no longer with us. But he was a really impactful person in my life. And we were discussing something I was depressed about at the time. And he just said that. He goes, happiness is not a point, it's a range. And it got bright for me. And so I paused the session and wrote it down. It wasn't until many years later that I made anything with it. But I love that idea. It was such a nice strategic tool that I had, because then I realized when I was starting to get out of the range, I would just do some things that pulled me back up in the range, rather than like beating myself up. And I became more aware of where my edges were. You know, when I started to get down to that part where like I was moving into unhappiness, or I was moving into depression, or I was going back to those same self-destructive patterns or cycles in my mind, I would like do something that helped. And just having that as a framing helped.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I use health as synonymous with happiness, just because some of the same facets or signatures apply, because it's a range, right?
Yeah.
You can be moving different directions along that range. I think of healing. It's actually crazy. I mean, that only about a year ago did I realize that the word health had the word heal in it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, wait a minute, how did I not see that?
Language is amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, right. But you can be healing, it's like moving towards wholeness. It doesn't mean there's a terminus to get to. It's just you can be moving in that trajectory along that. Or you can be ailing, you could be moving towards illness, and there's a range. And like you said, there's certain things when you get to the edge of that acceptable range, I go do 100 pull-ups, you know, or whatever. Yeah. I do things in my body that make me feel healthy. And health and happiness aren't always the same in every aspect, but I do think there's a lot of overlap there.
Well, I know that when I'm unhealthy, it's hard for me to be happy.
Right.
That's something that's like, I've learned it over and over and over again. And I do know that on a mid or long timeline, doing things that make me healthy tend to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not immediately, because sometimes doing things that are healthy are hard. Right?
Often.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe even a majority of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, hard and short term and very adaptive long term, generally.
Yeah. I think that what you were talking about, you know, there being a destination out there that will suddenly make you feel everything that you've ever imagined you wanted to feel, and you would be everything that you've ever imagined you would be. I mean, there is no there. There is only here.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so what are you going to do here? And that's the question. And it's a never-ending question. And only you can answer it.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Do you know Byron Katie? You know that woman? Yeah. She's a trip.
I don't know her, but I know of her.
Yeah. I got to know her pretty well. We did a project with her. And she kind of speaks to that. I went out to lunch with her one day. I'm like, I'm with Byron Katie. What I asked Byron Katie? I'm not going to like ask her about the weather. You know, I'm going to cut right to it. So I was like, okay, so Katie, I was a little bashful. It's like, so Katie, how do you understand enlightenment? She kind of like took her a long time. That's what gurus are like, really good at that. They like take a long time before they answer you.
They got a strong power pause.
Yeah, totally. It's like Eckhart basically doesn't have to say anything anymore.
I've seen Eckhart talk twice, and he saw me perform once and gave me a hug afterwards. And I love his work, but both times that I saw him talk, I fell asleep.
Yeah.
Because he was so calming that I I drifted off. So I think that's the biggest compliment I could give him.
I think he would accept it as such. I've seen him a couple times too. And, he has a very diminutive stage setup, right? It's like just like a little armchair basically on a rug. I saw him at like Royce Hall, I think, at UCLA. And it's like, I don't know, 1,500, 1,600 people in there. And I'm sure firsthand, like before the show, there's always this like nervous chatter in the audience, and there's little like pockets of it. It's like, oh, the mezzanine has its own little pocket of chatter. And then there's some chatter over here and some chatter over there. And, Eckhart comes out without any introduction, and he comes and just sits in the chair. And he's a small guy too. And he's so humble. And slowly, but very slowly, these pockets of chatter start to dissipate and vanish. Like someone will be like, ooh, there's Eckhart. And then like this little pocket will be quiet, and you start to hear the shh, and then all of a sudden the entire audience, 1,600 people, dead quiet. You hear a pin drop, and he hasn't said a word. And he'll sit there for another 10 minutes and just bring everybody into that place of utter tranquility. It's amazing.
That is a power pause.
I'm like, that is the ultimate power pause.
10-minute power pause.
Yeah.
Once I... Wait, so
good.
what did Katie
Byron
say?
Katie. So
Yeah.
she's like, well, Jeff, what makes you feel heavy? So I'll just do it on you. So Adam, what in life, makes you feel heavy?
Trying to balance setting goals and having expectations, and then showing up and not trying to control the situation or like imprison other people or myself to those expectations. And when I don't feel clean in that department of my life, I start to feel heavy because I look around and I only see problems, and I only see what I need to do to control those things, and then I forget how much magic is in the world.
Okay. So then, Adam, what makes you feel light?
My wife.
Yeah. And then, so this is what she asked me, those questions.
Should I ask you?
Sure.
What makes you feel heavy?
Burgers. Alcohol the next day. I'm giving more, whatever, literal answers.
I love how different our answers are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have obviously emotional heaviness. Generally, like when I'm feeling resentment, and then I can't sleep because I'm brooding some form of revenge, holding some sort of ember, getting burned.
That dude.
It always comes back to that dude. Yeah. He's gonna call again. So that's what makes me feel heavy.
What makes you feel light, Jeff?
A salad. When I'm in deep, undivided conversation, I lose all sense of weight, honestly. Most recently, especially with my children, especially with my eldest daughter, who is just amazing. So that's what makes me feel light.
That's beautiful. What, when you say amazing, what are all the things that come to mind when you say that?
I'm not allowed to cry on my own podcast. No, so she is just thriving. She's thriving. I can't believe I had any part in making that. I used to say my daughters are the trees that I will never sit under. But I'm sitting under her tree.
She's giving you shade.
Yeah. So she's just like so remarkable. Anyhow.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. That's like really beautiful. We're trying to have kids right now. And so just even watching your emotional reaction makes me feel even closer to you and makes me excited to take that journey myself if we're lucky enough to bring a baby into the world.
Yeah. I hope you can. It is a certain unique form of gratification. And I know people that haven't had kids who are exploring all sorts of other forms of gratification.
Yeah.
And so I think it's available for everyone. But to learn from your children is a special kind of experience.
Well, it's kind of like you're, I mean, I don't want to like be overly like spiritual or anything, but you're having a God experience. You're creating, but then the creations take on absolute creativity of their own in every possible way, and then have experiences and truths and emotions and things that you'll never know, and things that they can teach you, from not only your parenting experience to them, but also their life experience to you, growing up in a different time with the influences and environments that you have gifted them with. It was funny, I was up there and you have such a beautiful veranda basically, and there's this incredible
wisteria
tree that's like twisting and turning around this fireplace and this table. It's just describing it to the other people, not to you. And then there's this like flower bed basically on this awning, and there's this ecosystem of bees. And as I was like listening to the bees, I was thinking, I wonder if your kids like understand what it took for you to create this life for them. And I wasn't even I didn't have anything else beyond that. It was like a passing thought, but yeah.
So you're obviously have some form of like attunement. You carry that. Because my daughter, Phoebe, my eldest, she called me this morning and she was sobbing. I'm like, what's up? And she's just like, I'm just so grateful for you.
Now you're gonna make me cry.
And like, she's 19.
Yeah.
I'm 53. I'm not sure I've ever called my parents and said that. We both had kind of hard scrabble upbringings in different ways. Like my parents had this kind of opposites in some ways. My parents had this super acrimonious divorce, and I was totally estranged from my mother for quite a long time. And my brother and I lived with my dad. And I was like, I had kind of a chip on my shoulder about it for a long time. And didn't really want to give them much credit for their parenthood. And then I finally grew up. And I realized like they were just really just doing the best they possibly could for me and my brother, just given those circumstances.
Yeah.
and I had to let go of that ember, finally get some sleep.
Yeah.
And be grateful for them. But I'm not sure I've ever called them the way my daughter called me and said it.
It might be an interesting exercise if you feel called to do that, or like, not to bring it back to the journal or the album, but as a friend and as a teacher, the first thing that I hear when I hear you say that is, that's a poem. Like what you said about the shade of the tree with your kids, and then saying that you're under that shade now, that's the start of a piece. And it could go in any direction, but it could also go towards, getting that call from your daughter and realizing that you haven't done that with your parents, and writing them a poem of gratitude. And that's kind of the alchemy that takes place when you use creativity to put a microscope on a frozen part of your life, is it opens up possibility, the way that conversation does, the way that deep meditation does. And then when you speak it out loud to somebody else, you almost can get the universal wink, Yeah.
Isn't it funny that you essentially just put me through the experience of the journal in this conversation in real time without maybe even meaning to do it?
I definitely didn't mean to do it, because I feel like we've put each other through the conversation. I got to say this, like on the last round of podcasts that I did, this is just a personal comment to you, but thank you for everybody who's taking the time to listen. Maybe you'll get something from this as well or not. But I was so like agenda oriented towards like getting the story of Inquire Within out there, my other book, that I'm not sure I actually like fully sat with people or like met with them in the middle. I remember really liking our other conversation, but I feel so much more like dropped in with you now. And it's because even though I knew why I came here, I was like, I want to give other people an opportunity to explore mental and emotional health through creativity with the journal and with the album. I also was like, I wonder what's going to happen. Like to just be with my buddy and capture it. And so like, I feel like you've taken me on the journey too,
Yeah. Sweet. I mean, there comes a point where you have to just trust yourself. And trust yourself in connection with someone that you love and respect.
Yeah.
And let the alchemy just happen. I'll finish the Byron Katie.
Yeah, please.
So it's so easy enlightenment, Adam. You don't have to be Jesus. You don't have to be the Buddha. You just have to do the things that make you feel light. And it was such a simple form of wisdom. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think we all know that subjective feeling of physical lightness. Like we're walking down the street, but it's like, we have a little pep. We feel a little bit of 2 inches above the ground, We feel light. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
I like that.
So never ending now. Alan Watts, he called it the everlasting now. I actually like never ending now. But there is in the album, there is such an exquisite tenderness between you and your wife. Just like, oof. I mean, you can hear kind of it's almost painful, the love that she feels for you.
Yeah.
And again, that emotion, that love is not something, this is what I took from it. It's not something that was inside of you or inside of her at that moment while I'm listening to it. That is that love was existing. It was pulsating in this field of activity between you. And it kind of just comes to this crescendo in the final piece. So would you do that one for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Love is not soft, love is hard. Love is not smooth, love is scarred. Love is not perfect, love is flawed. Love is not quiet, love is loud. Love is not pride, love is proud. But love is not certain, love is doubt. And love is not leaving, love's turning around, love's learning to fight for the middle ground. Love is not gentle, love is rough. Love is not fragile, love is tough. Love is not thinking that love is enough. So I choose to love you harder from the moment I wake up. Love is a revolutionary act. Love is an attack. Love is not abstract, love is a fact. Love is saying yes when I want to say no. Love is saying stay when I want to say go. Love is staying high even when I get low. Love is going with the flow, holding on and letting go. Because love is not easy. Love is complex. Love is not right or wrong. Love is context. Love is not black or white. Love is progress because love is not a product. Love is a process, yes? So in the simple moments, when the chaos fades away, in the silence of the evening or the empty of my day, I remember what it feels like to give my heart away and think how lucky I have been to get to love someone this way. And how lucky we still are to get to love someone this way. It's a miracle to be alive. That's why I have to say, love is not a guarantee. It will come and it will leave. It relies on my belief, so it will bring me to my knees. Love is weak, love is loss, love is grief, love is loss, love is risk, love is real, but love is worth the pain we feel. And I won't let the fear of losing you limit how I'm loving you. I'm gonna love you harder. It's a privilege to be hugging you. I'm gonna love you harder more than ever before. I'm at peace with knowing love is war. That's what we're fighting for. So love harder. First yourself, then your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, and your community. Then try to love a stranger. Try to tap into your empathy. Imagine that you've known them and protected them since infancy. Now try to love the people that you don't love at all. Even people you don't like, they probably need it most of all. And if you can't love them big, see if you can love them small. See if you can hold compassion for the asshole that they are. And they are. But love is not soft, love is hard, love is scarred, love is flawed, love is loud, love is proud, love is doubt. And since love is most important when we do not know how, I will choose to love you harder in the never ending now.
Mm. Yeah, this moment is the only time it's ever been. You know, sometimes I think for those chasing eternity, just like we'll be here now, because now is eternity. And we have some agency over what we do and what we think right now. In fact, that might be the only agency we have. So love. You know, I was recently introduced to this word sonder. You know that word?
Mm-mm.
It's a wonderful word. And you touch on the idea of loving someone that you don't know. And sonder is this realization that every stranger that you pass on the street has a life as vivid and intense as your own. And living with that theory of mind, you know, that I can love this person that I don't know because they have dreams and they have families and they have friends and they have brokenness. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like such an amazing concept. And if you could keep it in the backdrop of your life, it would make everything better. It's hard to navigate the world and constantly feel that level of unconditional love, and to see everyone like that from me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I write my poems. It's like me purging and praying and reminding myself of the ways that I want to live. And one of the things that I've been doing is occasionally I'll like pray to random people, but like I'll pray to them as if they are God. And then I'll pray for them, you know, as if God is outside of them. And it's also a nice practice, and it tends to like leave me with that feeling. And I don't ever tell them. I just like look at them and like they'll be talking and I'll just like just start praying to them, you know,
like silently in your head.
Or I'll just start being like, I pray for them and I'm like wishing them that all of their dreams would come true. And they're like telling me about something that's like always unimportant. It can't be anything. Like, I don't want to like be unfocused in a real conversation, but like, I like to do it with strangers. And I also like to buy strangers things.
Yeah.
You know, like very small things. Like if I'm at a liquor store or something and I'm getting, I go, hey, do you want something, anything, you know? And it always absolutely makes the person's day.
Casamigos reposado. Next time you're there.
Okay. That's a bit.
You're not exactly. Talking about it. Maybe like a little.
It's more Snickers or something ridiculous, but a cup of coffee. I bought somebody a Kaiser cup of coffee last week. The 3 women at the front, I had to go to the like emergency room for some reason, and not emergency, whatever the urgent care is.
Yeah.
And they were all like, these 3 women, they were all so nice. Yeah. And they were just dealing with like an influx of people. So I was like, do you guys want coffee?
Yeah.
You know, and I did it and literally didn't tell anyone, not even my wife, until bringing it up right now. But
made their day.
It really did. And it also like took us out of the veil of all the bullshit of what we were doing and actually just like made them be like, hey, thank you.
Right.
And I was like, no, thank you. I appreciate you being here. It was quite nice. So
yeah. I mean, we hear about kind of, you know, random acts of kindness, right? And it's easy to kind of eye roll that. But I believe like these kinds of actions, they're a form of like social fitness. It's like we have like a kind of an aerobic or physical fitness. You know, you have to flex it to develop the musculature. You also have to flex your social musculature in some ways to keep it toned, or at the end of the day, like you've got no social connections unless you do that.
That's right.
And so I think that's beautiful. And
I think it's another form of sonder, right? That was the word?
Yeah.
Sonder.
Sonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is so cool, man. So just on some logistics, where can people find the album, the journal, you, all of the above?
So I created the journal in partnership with Passion Planner.
It's beautiful, by the way.
Yeah,
it just feels beautiful, like just the texture and the page. You know, I don't know what they call that. You know, the paper and everything. Awesome.
Yeah, they did an amazing job designing it from cover to cover. And they're a leader in the space, so I was really lucky to partner with them. And the main woman that runs it, Angel Trinidad, so shout out to her. And so it'll be on the Passion Planner website. You can find it on my website, in-q.com. It'll also be on Amazon. And the album will be everywhere you can stream it, you know, like Spotify and Apple Music and YouTube. And you can do them together, or you can do them separately. You can listen to the album and not get the journal. You can buy the journal that has a QR code also for you to listen to the album and kind of like deepen your experience. But I'm excited to let this go into the world and let it live for other people. If you do get it, I would love to hear about it. So you can like hit me up on Instagram. I'm at NQLife, or any of the other messaging places that you can find me, Twitter or X, I guess they call it these days.
Are you leading workshops these days?
Yeah, so I do all of these like corporate workshops as well. And I like travel around the country and the world doing these things because after working with kids for so long, I got hired to do a corporate gig, and I realized that adults needed it as much, if not more, because they had more stories piled on the years and years of life.
More stories and probably more inhibition in some cases.
Yeah. So I give people an opportunity to write about something real and then get up on stage and be a rock star. And it's an incredible bonding experience for people that work together because they actually finally get to know each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of miscommunication in the workplace comes from lack of context. People actually don't know who they're working with. So they misunderstand something, and then they have a hard time collaborating and creating together. So this is like a contained way for them to connect. And then we're also going to do public shows and public workshops. And I think we'll wind up being in Miami and New York and Austin, LA, San Fran. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm hell-bent on getting a retreat going up in Topanga. So you're going to have to come visit.
I would love
Check it out.
Yeah.
And we'll take it from there. Adam, man, it's such a treat to be with you. I really, really mean it. I just love our time together, and you're an angel on the earth. And I love how you express yourself. I love how weird you are. I love that you're always coming up with something new and unique and beyond category. And I'm just glad to be with you on this journey. So thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. Really, the feeling is mutual, and appreciate you sharing my art with your community and also just like sharing your life in this conversation.
Hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll love this one too.